All right. Good morning. I thought I'd start my day doing a little bit of streaming. It really helps me. And I've been reflecting a little bit. I've been working a little bit as well. We got completely stuck yesterday working on a bug in Impact, which is like completely unrelated to this. But the thing I've been reflecting on is like the future of programming, I think, is that we'll kind of stop like implementing end user experiences, and we're kind of going to be engineers to create more like AI experiences to build end user experiences. So what I mean is that AI isn't just this one magical thing that can do anything. You have to have, it's a toolbox where you as an engineer, you have to use this toolbox and build custom stuff around it to make it able to produce whatever the end user experience is. And that's the thing we're exploring now, right? What is the AI capable of kind of out of the box? And what tool sets and structures do we need around it to make it actually capable of doing real things? And from the perspective I have, where I want an end user experience where you don't know how to code at all and still be able to build something. And that creates a lot of ambiguity. And that's the biggest, like, that's the first challenge to overcome. So, what I mean by ambiguity, is this how you, I think that's how you spell it. So, ambiguity depends on what you're building. So, you might have a GPT, for example, that is by default, there's a lot of ambiguity there. Like you could ask it for anything, right? But it's still just a text output, which is what makes it so powerful. It handles ambiguity really, really well because the output is just text. But even there, you can get surprises, right? So what you do is that you configure the GPT. So maybe you create an assistant on OpenAI and you just give it some instructions, and that makes it way more capable because you reduce the ambiguity. But when it comes to development, like the ambiguity in development is that you might ask for very different things. So you might ask for a request for change. So this could be like adding or changing or removing something in the actual code or in the application. But you might also want to iterate on a design. You want to discuss a feature. You want to debug an issue. You might want to deploy, I don't know, discuss analytics. Like there's a ton of stuff going into web development or actually building a web product. So that's kind of the first thing you have to identify. Like, how do you narrow down the ambiguity and how do you scope things so you can create an experience? So you wouldn't create one AI that can do all of this. In my mind, that doesn't make sense at all. Because, for example, if you take request for change, what kind of workflow is that? So a request for change is a type of workflow which we typically identify as creating user stories. Like that's the first part of that workflow. And then that creating user stories is about flushing out what is the actual request for change. Because you might just say, I want a task management application. That can be a million different things. So creating user stories makes it more concrete. And this requires like maybe a product manager, an engineer, a UX engineer, and a designer should be part of this to make sure that these user stories actually like reflects. And then you can even take in, okay, we should check these with some users. Like, is this really what the users want and stuff like that? But making this simple, let's just go with this. And then let's see. So you can argue that that is just a workflow in and of itself. And then there's like a different workflow. So that would be, yeah, would that be something you, well, I guess it leads to a different workflow, which would be create implementation plans. So you take those, create specification maybe. So you take those user stories. So the thing is, like, why are these things important for AI? Well, first of all, you need an AI to digest the ambiguity of what you're basically figuring out. Which workflow do I need to resolve this prompt? So you can imagine you have an ambiguity agent that basically just looks at what you're asking for and finds the correct workflow to resolve that request the best possible way. So if it's a request for change, it will go and start the user stories workflow, which includes a product manager, an engineer, a designer, and a UX engineer, for example. And all that these agents do is just flush out these user stories and creating as much context as possible. And they don't need anything from the user, really. Like, they can do this on their own. But typically, like, here you want the input from the user to see if, okay, are we getting at what you want? But when that's done, they should create a specification, like, what are we actually going to implement? And in this case, you want like a tech lead role. You want an engineer to verify the specification. You want the UX engineer to verify that specification. And verifying a specification and verifying a user story are very different kinds of tasks. Even though it's the same roles involved, it's very different like task. It's a very different guided prompt for the AI to make it do that. And then you have this very fleshed out technical specification, and then you can go to implementation. And now you have, like, the context is this very fleshed out set of user stories, very fleshed out set of specification, and you go to the implementation workflow. In the implementation workflow, you of course you have like one engineer that does the actual implementation. You have another engineer that validates that implementation. You have a UX engineer implementing the UI. You have another UX engineer validating, implementing that UI. Maybe you have a designer that takes a picture of the damn thing and looks at the implementation, or like looks at it from a visual perspective, and so on. And like, you need all of this because we need all of this as humans. Like, this is how we work together. And even though AIs are powerful, their reasoning is limited on their own, and their context window is very small, so they can't do things, at least not for now. There's probably gonna be one day where there's this like super amazing powerful AI, but I still think you want them to work together. Like, there's something fundamental about that. It's like if you ask one person to solve a problem, you might solve the problem, but you won't get the best solution because there's no input from others. There's no like bumping your reasoning and reflection. Like, reflection is a big thing in AI as well. You want them to reflect. And maybe you can do this within like one. You can just, yeah. So in this case, maybe you can just prompt one AI to ask for a task management application, and it will create the user stories, reflect on those user stories in different modes, like from a technical perspective, from a UI perspective. But that is really what agents are. Like maybe agents is the wrong term, because agents makes you think there are actual different AIs, but there aren't different AIs. It's just different modes of thinking. To enhance the context. That's how I think about it. Anyways, so you do that implementation, and then that's just like the actual implementation. And then you have validation. And validation is a very different workflow. So for example, in creating user stories, you don't necessarily need any functions. Maybe you do need some functions, because you have to validate if any of these user stories affects existing functionality. So being able to read the project structure is probably necessary. But creating a specification, there you definitely need to be able to like read the project structure, read file contents, and so on. And in implementation, you also need to be able to write code. Maybe you need access to certain embeddings and so on. And for validation, you have a different set of tools, which is more related to checking runtime logs, being able to take a picture or capture the app and stuff like that. So, but what I like about this is that I'm starting to kind of find APIs for that enforces this way of thinking about it. So I created this, I have this agent abstraction now, which I think deals very much with, if I do, so this will be the agent where you would say product manager, engineer, enhance user story technically, UX engineer, enhance user story from UX perspective. Like, the point is, I've been working on this abstraction, and this is working really well now. I'm excited to show it to you. And I have this agents abstraction, but I don't think I'm going to call them agents. I'm going to call it agent workflow, or just agents workflow. And this is where you add a certain amount of agents, and then you orchestrate when they contribute, basically. So you have a very specific intention with that workflow, which could be creating user stories. And then you have a number of agents that's responsible for creating user stories, and you orchestrate the communication between them. And then there's a result from that workflow, which in this case is a set of user stories. And then you would need like a layer in front of that. So you would have like a user story workflow. And then that gives a result, and then you can pass that result into the create specification workflow, where you have a different set of agents. Maybe they are the same roles, but they are prompt differently, as I talked about. Yeah, so this is what we're exploring. Where's the code? So what we are gonna do is, let's see, I'm calling it team now, but yeah, so what I want to show you first is that now where do I create this agents workflow? So the way this works now is that we create these agents, which is going to be a workflow instead. And let's see. Yeah, maybe I should just look at the API. So now we have like a product manager, And when you create that agent, you give it a name, you give it a description, and then it has state. So this is conceptually really interesting. So if you think about communicating with an agent or an AI, you think about like getting text output, right? And you can even think about it calling functions. But what this abstraction does is that it makes the agent populate its own state. So when you consume this agent, as it like handles your prompts, you will be able to check the state of the agent as well. And it will populate these values based on the interactions with the user or a different agent. Or at least that's intention. So when this should be state. So when this agent generates its prompt, it can go in and check its own state. So if it already has, this should be generate prompt, create agent, generate prompt. Oh, this is, oh, was it undefined there? I find this weird. Like this should be potentially undefined. Why isn't it? Generate prompt. Yeah, I'm not sure why it says that it can be. I think it's just my type config. Anyways, so when you generate the prompt, it might be the first time, so you might not have any state there. But then we can say, okay, so if we have some state and we actually have some suggested user stories, we're going to give this prompt and like prompt engineer the AI to, yeah, I give it a list of user stories because it might hallucinate and like think there are other stories. So it's very specific. Like the context window might be gone for some reason. So we're always like, these are the user stories we're working with. And then I tell it to not make any changes to this list if I confirm the list. So that could also happen. Like I say, yeah, this is a good list. And then it just returns some new suggestions. Like this is prompt engineering, right? You have to still do a lot of this stuff because inferring your exact intention is difficult for an AI. It's difficult for a human because we only have language. Language isn't perfect, right? Language isn't instructions. Language is just indication of intention. So, but if we don't have anything, I tell it to actually suggest some user stories. And then what we can do on the outside with this state, well, so when it generates a response, well, I thought I renamed these. We check if it's confirmed, we just return the response. So it probably just says something like, okay, these are the user stories or something. But if it doesn't, I actually list the user stories in the state with the actual like human language response. So this gives a lot of control to create an experience where you mix the generative part of it and you give structure to it. And then in the flow, you can see here on agent completed, if it's the product manager and it is confirmed, we'll prompt the PM engineer, what do you think about the following user stories? And then we take the user stories from the state and we give it to that other agent. So that's pretty cool. And this is how you would implement the user story flow. So what we're going to do now, we're going to make that more explicit. So we're going to, I think we're just going to remove these other agents. And then we're not going to say agents. We're going to rename this to flows. Agent flows. always. And this is gonna be user stories. This is gonna be the actual, how should I structure this? Yeah. So what we're gonna do, we're rather gonna, so we have the product manager here. We have the PM engineer here, and then we're going to export const user stories. And here we're gonna create agent flow. And we're gonna give it the product manager. We're gonna give it the PM engineer. And here, now I can call it engineer again. That's nice, because that was also a frustrating thing. It can be named engineer. And then we are gonna give it a callback to actually handle the flow. So this will give an agent. And then we have some options where initial agent would be product manager. So this will kind of be the agent thing. Create agent flow, agents. So let's rename this to agent. Is it agents flow? Agents flow. Yeah, agents flow. That's nice. So we have create agent, and then we're gonna also do let's see, export create agents flow. And what we're gonna do here, we need some generics for this. Oh, hi, the legend. Thanks for stopping by. Yeah, I'm feeling good today. I feel I've been kind of in a rut last few days for different reasons. But yeah, I had a moment yesterday where I kind of felt like partly very inspired, partly very like at unease. But yeah, yesterday things kind of just generally resolved itself, and I feel quite pumped, and I feel very inspired. So yeah, and I just love playing around with this stuff. So anyways, what was the API? So we need the actual, let's see, what's the do I have? Oh yeah, handle function. Yeah, I can keep that for now. Where's the, there we are. So yeah, of course, it's just T of agents. Oh, thanks. Yeah, thanks. Hope you're doing good as well. Let's see. So this will be the agents. And then we have the workflow callback flow, which is going to be, let's see, on agent completed. This is the typing for that. Yeah. Agent. And then we have the actual options. So I'm wondering if I can actually drop. Well, we'll see. We'll see what we do with this. Where are the options? I guess those are in the constructor. Yeah, agent options. Let's see. Flow. Oh, this is void, and then options. You have to have options because you have to set the initial agent. Let's see. Agents option. Maybe this should be agents flow option. Cool. And the thing about this is that yeah, so the tricky thing now is that each of these flows generates messages. Yeah, let's not worry about that for now. Because I do think from a user perspective, you don't really want to see like the messages between flows. Like there will be a very explicit concept in the UI for like opening a flow and running a flow, and then you will kind of move to a different flow. I think we'll explore that, but what should we do now? Because we need to kind of hook in how to yeah, we're just gonna let's just new agent. Oh yeah, let's call this agents flow, new agents and options agents flow, and let's rename this to agents flow. And what we need to do is agents flow on agent completed. We want to call that flow. And let's just return the agent flow for now. We're going to see what we're going to do about this. Because what's going to happen is we need to like this abstraction doesn't know anything about the actual AI model layer. So it's just like getting prompts in and sending requests to send a message out. So let's see. Create agents flow. Okay, so now we have our user stories flow. Or we could even call it like request for change flow. Yeah, I really like this. And anyways, so we are not going to do that here. We're just going to say we have, maybe we could just call it flows and then request for change. Oh, let's rename that. Request for change. Yeah, and we shouldn't import that. Okay, so we have these flows now, and we're gonna hard code it a little bit for now. And we're gonna yeah, this is interesting because we need more stuff now. We also need to be able to yeah, let's just copy this over. And let's see, request for change. This is what we actually want to do. And then, so we have the agent, but we also want to like prompt another agent. Is that all we want to do here? Okay, let's just try that. Prompt agent. Create agents workflow. So prompt agent is, I think is a void. On agent completed. Ugh, it's a typing. I think we can just do agent flow by prompt agent. Yeah, and we bind that to agents flow. And then let's look at prompt agent. Oh, okay, it's that simple. Okay. But for some reason this. Wait a minute. I'm doing this wrong. So I'm giving. Oh, yeah, of course. So on agent completed, this gives us the agent. Yeah, sorry. So we can do flow. Okay, sorry. Flow prompt agent equals. We can do agent prompt agent. This should work. Yeah. Cool. So now, yeah, it's called engineer. Okay, nice. So again, we're kind of playing around with this to see where it goes. But what we need to do now is flow, like we have to handle prompts. We have to listen to like every flow. And maybe we have some internal state that flips between the flows and then registers the listeners. So it kind of hooks the thread into the current flow, but for now we'll just hard code it. Yeah, so we will kind of have a current flow. Let's just have flows and then current flow, private current flow. Yeah, let's just call it key of flows. Yeah, let's see. You know, I'm gonna hard code it. Request for change. So we'll do current flow and then we'll do get current flow, return this flows, this dot current flow. Oh, request for change, doesn't it? How do I make it a const? There we go. we don't care about the getter for now, so we should be able to just say this current flow, this current flow, this current flow. Yeah, I guess this is how we want to do it. So we have this general thread listener, and then we just pass that stuff into the current flow. That makes a lot of sense. Oh, this is interesting though. Yeah, no, I think you want. Ooh. Function calls are tricky because you want to share function calls across agents and flows. So the question is, do you where do you define the functions? So I was thinking maybe the functions needs to be defined since they're shared between, like now you need an agent name to get the correct typing of the function call, because the function call is defined on the agent. But you could argue that function calls is something outside the agent, and then they can just reference a function call, which means that you just have one set of function calls. And you would, when you create the agents flow, or when you create an agent, you pass in what functions it should have. And you will basically just filter the list of functions. So then yeah, I'm not sure how to do that. Let's not worry about that for now. I'm a little bit unsure how that should work. Okay, so I think we have our abstraction now. Okay, let's see if it actually runs, or we have some. Oh, yeah, this is also an, yeah, that's what I talked about. Like now the messages are tied to the flow. So now, okay, let's just say create. I think I can just implement agent flows. Request. Wait, where is this? Was it agent flows? Oh, of course. Request for change. Request for change. So this wouldn't be return type, it would just be request for change. So now the messages are typed to the messages coming from request for change, but with different flows, there's different set of messages from the different flows. This is very interesting. So you would kind of have, I think you would have, well, you would have to identify where the messages are coming from. It's not just messages anymore. You have to say from which flow are they coming. But yeah, for now we just have one flow. So I think that's fine. What's this? Workspace. Current flow. Oh yeah. Okay, no errors. So let's see where we're at. Okay, let's open the project, and finally we're not being distracted by impact anymore. It's working as it's supposed to, which is good. So let's imagine we have this AI in front and it will guide us to the user stories flow. But now it's hard coded, so I'm gonna say I want a task management app. So this should go to the product manager, and now, so what I'm doing here, I'm writing out the like all these agents, they respond with JSON. But as part of that JSON, they have state and they have the actual like human language response. That's a problem for streaming because now we can't stream like the human language response. But I think for agents, like an agent's workflow, you don't want streaming anyways, because that abstraction helps you deal with complexity. And when you deal with complexity, it takes time. So you won't be sitting there as a user looking at this stuff. But for now, I'm kind of just streaming the response just to look at it. And then when the message is completed, I parse the JSON and give the actual state and response. So this is coming from the state, this list. So this is like reliably showing this list. And then we have the actual response, human language response. So I should be able to iterate on this user story now. Drop the title, due date, prioritization, prioritizing, and drop the title, due date, prioritizing, reminders, collaboration. But this is good, right? When you say you want a task management app, you might think what I'm thinking. I just want an input, an add button, and a list. I don't even want to toggle. So maybe we can do that. I just want a task management app where I can. And this is the point. This is what AIs needs to do. They need to help you be precise about what you want. I just want a task management app where I can write the description of a task, click a button to add it to a list, and see the list of added tasks. And remember, this is GPT 3.5, which isn't like super awesome, but it's super cheap. So you see how cheap it is here. So user, I want to be able to write the description for task. As user, I want to be able to click button to add a task with its description to a list. As user, I want to be able to see a list of all tasks. Nice. This looks great. And I have had issues. So the prompt engineering is also the state. So you saw it confirmed it now. And now we're sending it to the engineer. And the engineer is just going through. Yeah, so this is a problem. You see this? When I now said this looks great, it suggests some new user stories. So that's like part of the prompt engineering is like, how do you ensure that the state you build, in this case, I want to like build up these user stories. How do I make sure that when that it doesn't change it? So this is a problem, but let's look at that later. But the point is, it passes the user stories to this engineer. The engineer now says something more specific, like this involves implementing a form field with fields for a title and description to capture task details. And it says this requires adding a checkbox or button to toggle the completion status of a task. Like it just enhances and adds context to what needs to be done. And then I'm going to try to send this to like a UX engineer and ask them to populate with even more information about how it should look and so on and so on. But first, let's try to fix so that it actually passes what I confirm. So what I wonder is, let's see, request for change. I'm not sure if it should be suggested user stories, because it mixes it with its like suggestion capability. So let's just call them user stories, and then the list of well, yeah, let's just say the list of user stories. And I've been also reflecting on how can you like efficiently iterate on these agents. So you want to create a new role or a new agent, and you want to like make sure it does the right thing. So there should be a mode here where you can just prompt that single, like ignore the flow and just prompt that single agent to see if it does what it's supposed to do. Also thought about having like fine tuning on them, which basically means not real fine tuning, but I guess it's more like giving examples of responses. That should also help it. But anyways, and user stories. Let's try again. Want task management application. And I'm not saying that engineer like adding the technical stuff is necessarily the right thing. Like that's the thing you have to figure out. Like how do you build up the best possible context within that flow to make the next flow perform better? And then what do you do there to make the next flow perform better? So it's super, super complicated. And this is what I think will happen. I think this is what we're going to be doing as engineers. We're going to orchestrate, like instead of like creating state management for user interfaces, we're going to do state management for AI workflows, if that makes sense. I want to be able to create a new task with I only need a description and no priority. Priority. Oh, that's interesting. Now it suggests a comment and due date. I wonder how we're gonna make it understand. Yeah. I wonder what would be the right thing to do there. You can only with the following user stories. Let's see, I have the and this is the thing, you're kind of writing from the perspective of like a user prompt. I have the following user stories. please make any requested changes or confirm the list. Or confirm this exact list. Okay. And it's kind of funny, like, and you might think that, like, why this seems so random and intuition based and all that, but it really is. Like, that's the weird thing about AI. It's not exact. It's not programming, in the sense, programming. Just making it like return JSON response. It's not because I flip a Boolean flag saying JSON true. Like, the way you make it return JSON responses is with prompt engineering. So the prompt engineering for making it return JSON responses is this. Let's see. So this is the agent description. The output structure must be a valid JSON object with this JSON schema. And then I insert the actual JSON schema, the state collected during the conversation. And then it's the actual prompt. And then I say output JSON with no extraneous text or wrappers, and always populate the user response value. Like, that's the Boolean flag for JSON response. Which is very fascinating. It feels very unreliable, but it's surprisingly reliable. But as you know, AI can at times like just randomly create something bad. But that's not the prompt engineering. I think that's the model. So as the models get better, they'll just get more reliable. And it doesn't mean you need to change your prompts, or it doesn't change prompt engineering. Prompt engineering just gets more reliable. But prompt engineering is implementing AI, if that makes sense. I don't know. I'm just sharing a ton of reflections. Let's see how it performs now. I want a task management application. It only needs, here is please review them and confirm if these meet. It only needs, the tasks only needs a description. A task only needs a description, and I only want to see added task. Does it say anything about like adding it to a list? The tasks, okay, I really only want to give a task a description, click a button to add it to a list, and see a list of added tasks. Yeah, this is exactly what I want. Let's see if it confirms. Yeah, and this is also the problem. It doesn't see it as a confirmation, right? So this is also a challenge. Like, and this is what I'm exploring now. Now, how can you make the state update reliably based on user prompts? And how so what we could do is check needs needs user validation. So we could try this instead. So we say needs user validation. And we say don't needs user validation. If the user should validate the user stories. Please make or so let's just try without this and see how well it performs. But yeah, I'm very curious what companies do to I think they just have playgrounds and they just prompt it and just like it's not an exact science. You can't write tests for this, right? I get maybe to some extent you could, but these tests needs to actually run. Yeah. Want a task management application. Oh, something went wrong. Oh, it's me. My bad. It should be the opposite. My bad. Let's make sure this looks like this. My bad. Open project folder. I want a task management application. I really only want to add tasks with a description. I want tasks with a description, ability to add them to a list, clicking a button and see the list of added tasks. As a user, I want to be able to create a task with a title and description. Whatever, that's fine. And I want to add a task to a list by clicking a button. As user, I want to be able to view the list of tasks. Okay, this is great. It still says needs user validation. Fuck. Yeah, how? Maybe I'm thinking about this the wrong way. How? Like, can I bump it? Like, can I be very explicit about this? Always evaluate the validation. Also, if I have validated. And I was also thinking, like, should it be explicit interactions in the UI where I would like actually click a button in the UI to say, okay, I'm ready to move on from here. But yeah, that's like, that feels like a fallback. It should just work. I wonder if I can always evaluate the, maybe I should even like do this. Let's try doing this generically, because you also have always evaluate the state of the conversation, and I'll put Json with no extra. the state of the conversation. Always evaluate the state of the conversation. I wonder if that could like help it. So then I don't have to be so specific for each agent. I want a task management application. So that would be the amazing thing. Like if the library has like really awesome prompt engineering for having stateful conversations. Management application. That would be amazing. I really just want to describe a task, click a button to add it to a list and see a list of added tasks. This looks great. No, needs user validation. So it has a hard time like understanding this user term. I have a feeling like we think of ourselves as the user, but maybe we should actually output the current state. Oh, this is interesting. What if we have state, we output the state? I'm gonna try that. This is the current. Okay, so we're gonna state or nothing. This is gonna be interesting. So if we have state, we're gonna say this is the current state of the conversation. So I don't even need to like prompt it. Like you know that when you generate a prompt, that it always has this current state. What you do is that you basically tell it what to do. This is the current state of the conversation. And we're just going to stringify state. The output structure must be a valid JSON object with a JSON schema. What's interesting here is like, and we're just pushing, there's not many tokens, like 1,000 tokens, and GPT 3.5 has like, what does it have? GPT 3.5 context window size. Does it have 16,000? Oh, 4K. That's not much. That is not much. I thought it had 16K. OpenAI models. I thought it had a bigger. So GPT-4 has 128,000. I thought there was a 16K window as well. Yeah. It's 16K. Okay. turbo instruct. Currently points to 16K. So that's quite nice. So we have a lot to work with. And this is why it's also important to really split up things, because the context window narrows down very quickly. Okay, so we just added that, so that means that we don't need to actually say this. So here we can actually just return the prompt, I think. Well, here we say, please suggest some user stories. And when we generate response, we do actually want to show them. But when we generate the prompt here, yes, this is also interesting. So in the agents, in the actual flow here, I kind of have the prompt here. So I was wondering if doing prompt agent, it should be possible to set the initial state. I think that makes a lot of sense. I'm not sure. Let's just try this, see if it gets better. If I want task management application. Yeah, I just want to add task with a description to create the task with a description. Click button to add it to a list and see a list of added tasks. This looks great. Oh, it worked. So that's interesting. And then I get the updated. Let's see if it's the same. So task creation using view components and has user interface. And then I want to style the task list using Tailwind CSS. I wonder what it gave it. Oh, there aren't any user stories there. Why did it empty out the user stories? It didn't quite work. Hmm. Um, maybe we shouldn't. Maybe we should be more explicit. Call it conversation. Well, should be enough with state, right? Especially the state when I describe it. Anyways, so We should flip them around. So it knows about the JSON structure first, and then let's do this. What did I have here? Evaluate the state of the conversation. Evaluate the updated state of the conversation. Output JSON with no blah blah blah. I want a task management application. This is perfect. No, you need user validation. So where is the problem? Is the problem here that it just doesn't really have a sense of the state? Is it the model? It's just too difficult for it to understand this, or is it the actual engineering, like prompt engineering of needs user validation? What do we say when we have needs input? Yeah, like what do we say when we have locked down a set of user stories? Do we say we can use review requires, like, so like these simple wording changes might not seem that important, but just the fact that here, if you don't use with here, that like really changes how the AI thinks about this. So it's actually down to the individual words you're using in prompt engineering, as I understand it. But that becomes like less and less important as the model gets better. So I guess that's the thing. Like the prompt engineering isn't as much as the words you choose, but the prompt engineering is more related to what prompts to, like how to enhance the prompts. Like it's more instructions than, yeah, I don't know how to put it. Hopefully it makes sense. Anyways, let's try again. I want a task management application. And what I hope is that I learn a lot about this, and then when we get to a point where I get better behaving agents faster, and we can like actually create something complicated. This is great. Requires review true. So we have two problems. It's not able to update the state. Always update the state. Always update the state of the to reflect the conversation. Output JSON with no. I wonder why it's not able to make that correlation. I want a task management app. I'm just gonna run with it. This looks great. I really just want to verify that it's. Why does it think? It's so annoying. I'm not sure if it's like able to correlate these things. Any state. I used to have data before. Always update the state to reflect the conversation, but it's like maybe we should be like more specific, calling it like conversation state or something. The JSON. Let's just. Yeah, I have a feeling this should be an underlying thing. It would at least make everything much simpler. If you could be very, sometimes it just hangs. That you could more reliably make it correlate the state with the conversation. I want a task management application. This is great. Interesting, it worked now, but I wonder if it's repeating the exact. It's just random stuff. But this engineer definitely needs to know something about the project, get some guidance, but this needs to be reliable. As a user, I want to be able to create a new project. Okay, so I probably didn't return any. A new project. What the hell? Okay, maybe this doesn't. Maybe this needs to work differently. So it's really good at So it's really good at iterating. Like if it gets a list of, okay, I'm gonna try that first now. I'm just gonna try to iterate on the list and see if it does. I want a task management application. I do not want due dates and time. So it's really good at doing this. But it's when I don't like want to interact. I find that so interesting. Why is it able to interact so well with the state when I ask it to change the state? Always update the existing state. Always consider the existing state when making changes. And this is great. What does it do now? Oh yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, now it adds like assign to a category. So when I'm not talking specifically about the list, it just produces new. It's almost like, what does this mean? Like, how can we make this more reliable? It's almost like update only the relevant state. Update only the relevant state. Output JSON. So maybe there's something there, like it kind of evaluates the whole state based on the prompt. Yeah. Management application. No, we should play with this. I would love to see this being reliable, because then it will be so much much more fun going forward. I do not need to edit the task. So let's like do a small edit just to see that it actually handles this. Okay, this is great. It's really interesting. By default, keep the existing state. Okay, so what if we put that in here? This is the current state of the conversation. Do not by default keep the existing state in the output. Only update relevant only update relevant parts. Like, I don't know. So annoying. I wonder what that is. Like, it just sometimes it just hangs, and it happens like after I open a workspace. No idea how to debug that stuff. What's happening here? I want a task management application. Sometimes I write state management without knowing it, so that might also affect this. I do not want to sort by priority and due date. It's so interesting how well it does this. This looks great. You know what? I think there's a we're gonna keep that. But what I think might be one of the issues here is that we don't so we'll use the prompt always ask me to validate the current list of user stories. So we have this term validate is validated, has validated the user story. If the user stories are, I'm gonna avoid the user here, especially since since we're talking about users. Maybe that's the problem here. We're talking about user stories, and then we kind of have this validation based on user. That might be the source of the problem. Ask me to validate the current list of user stories. Okay, let's try this. Oops. Oh, is valid. I have to change this again. think I need some food soon. Some food, and I think I'm gonna do a hell dive today. I do not need to edit a task. Do, do, do. Wait, is that the? You know what? The user stories is like, I have a feeling that's the worst thing I could ever. Why the hell did it? Because it has user, and I'm doing all this user response. Like I can't have convert prompt response. Like I have to use different terminology. Oh, this is too funny. User response. I think this is the issue. Like we're talking about user stories, and I'm using the term user for like the actual response. Like, yeah. I want, so that's a good thing. I want to talk about like how the hell do you debug that? Like you're creating this application with low level generic terms to handle any kind of prompt, and then there's just a specific context where you're using the same terminology, and then it starts like hallucinating or whatever that means. Oh, let's see now. Yeah, like now, well, I do not need due dates or assigning to other users. Ah, this looks great. Fuck, it just doesn't like, why the fuck don't you update the state? God damn it. So adding the existing state there didn't seem to make such huge difference, but it does prevent you from having to add it manually. So that's a good thing. But why doesn't this looks great? Keep this state. Keep this state in the output. But update. But update. But make changes based on the prompt. This is so interesting. It's validated. But this is what I'm curious about. Always ask me to validate the current list of users. It doesn't do that. So I wonder why it doesn't do that. Because if we could, that I think that's like you want to hint. You want to hint to what you want to update, right? So Always request the validation state of the user store. I wonder, like, maybe that's a thing. Like, so we're using validation, validated state. It's in the state. Yeah, let's see what it says now. I want a task management application. Oh, interesting. So it definitely always requests the validation state of the users. So this is interesting. So this definitely has an effect, which is good to know. It's almost like maybe it should be possible to maybe the description should rather be I'm going to try something. So not having this, but you describe when that field should be updated. Update this field when the prompt indicates that the user stories are good to go. Update this field when the prompt indicates that changes should be made to the user stories. This is interesting. Oh. The user story. So maybe that would help it guide it. So when you define the schema, it's not like what is it, but how does it update? I want a task management application. With a title description. I do not need to edit the tasks. Yeah, but now it like suggests completely new things. Okay, so I don't think that's the right thing to do. Because now I'm kind of telling it to update it. It's really hard to, like, they aren't stateful in that sense. Determines if the user stories are ready to. determines if the user stories no longer does not require changes. Determines. Because I do wonder how much effect the JSON schema has on how it updates. I want a task management application. I do not need to assign tasks. Completed, set the due date. Yeah, so this is working now. I think these look good. Okay, so that worked. Yeah. But did it actually, what did it actually send back? Is validated. I want to be able to assign a task to a specific user. I told you to remove that, god damn it. Yeah. So this is complicated. This is really complicated. So what I'm going to try now, I'm going to change this. So we're not going to do this. We're going to have this instead. So this might also be a thing, like the list of validated user story. So what does this mean? Generate prompt. Yeah, so then this is suggested user stories. So if no length to validated, oh, sorry, it should be this. Okay, so we're trying something else now. Validated user stories length. So booleans. Okay, note to self, having a hard time with booleans. Oh, god damn it. Maybe I should figure out why this crashes. No idea how to debug it though. I think I wouldn't need to like just comment out code and then, but it doesn't happen every time. It's so annoying. Want a task management application. Oh, didn't I? Generate response. Oh, length. Sorry. Okay, let's start again. I want task manager. I've written it so many times now, it's insane. Okay, let's try changing it. I do not need to edit tasks. So, but now it's suddenly removed delete task. So that's the thing, like it's generating. So maybe it's too complicated for it to yeah. Okay, I didn't need this before, so we're gonna drop this part. We're not gonna have the state in there. We are rather gonna generate the prompt. I have the following user stories. And we need to do boop. Map those to a list. User story. And we join them by doing this. Okay, we're gonna try again. I want a task management application. Yeah, I have to go for lunch. I do not need to edit or update a task. Completed specific team member. Okay. I think this looks good. So it still has this. For fuck's sake. Approved. Maybe approved is the term. The list of approved, not validated, unapproved, approved uses. Let's try that. God damn it. This is so... I just wonder where the problem is. Is it just the whole concept of trying to build a reliable state during a conversation? Or is there something completely different? I want a task management application, damn it. I do not need to assign tasks. Okay, this looks good. Still no approved user stories. So why isn't it able to So when I'm generating always ask me to validate the current suggested user stories. I'm sure if we put like GPT-4 on this, it would just work. So this is like the problem, but it shouldn't get worse. Like if we do prompt engineering that works for 3.5, maybe it's unnecessarily to the point, but it shouldn't be worse. Like putting a better model on it. So that's what I like about 3.5. It's like a very challenging puzzle. I want to add create management application. I do not need to edit tasks. Okay, I think those are pretty reliable. That's what he said. Mark has completed. Okay, so you can argue when I say I do not need to edit tasks, I don't need to delete them either. That's fair. That's definitely fair. This looks good. But why doesn't it ask me about approving or to approve? It's almost like there's a bug here. So I think it's conflicting with. I think it's conflicting with having JSON produced as the output. So I'm saying that it should output JSON, but I also telling it to ask me to validate the currently suggested user stories. So okay. The response should include asking me to approve the current user stories. So I need a way to guide, since it's a JSON output, there needs to be a way to guide what the actual prompt response should be. I can be even more. The prompt response should include. So maybe I should just be very, because I think this is how I would do it with normal prompt engineering. Is I would tell it to ask me to approve, and then that approval is like tied to the thing up here. Or at least creates like a correlation between them. I want a task management. So we're not gonna see if it updates the list now. We're just gonna, yeah, here are some suggested stories for your task management application. Oh, I think I know what. Yeah. Okay, so I think we should build, like, I'm not asking for this now. So generated prompt. So we're gonna say generated prompt plus equals And then we're going to say plus equals prompt. And then return generated prompt. And then we're going to say generated plus equals yeah, so if we have state and state suggested user stories length, and we're not going to do anything, or we're going to say please suggest some user stories. I'm not sure if this is like the best way to. Oh, this looks horrible. Let me just. I don't want to do refactors. Let's see. Always should include to prove the user stories. We need to have this here as well, because that's the first prompt. A task management application. Okay, so at least now it includes that. So maybe this is a thing where we say the response. Let me try changing something and see what happens. I do not need to sort by priority and deadline. Okay. Please review the suggested user story for the task manager application and improve them. Okay. So they look good. But it didn't populate approved user stories. Okay, but let's get back to the is approved, because now I kind of want to see if that just works. Boolean, the approval state of the user stories. So hopefully yeah, is approved. Let's try again. So that's an important thing, to include response. That's, yeah. Task management application. I do not need due dates. So the final problem is that it generates new suggestions when we approve. This looks good. Oh, please review and approve. God damn it, this is difficult. Yeah, this is difficult. I'm just gonna try with GPT-4 just to see if it's better at doing this. Let's drop the passing to the engineer. I want a task management application. I want edit tasks. I do not need to update. I do not need to update or categorize my tasks. Yeah, just to see what it does. What I need to do, I want to delete tasks. To view, search, be reminded. Yeah, I do not need to update or categorize, so it's remove that. Search tasks, I want to be reminded. Okay. This looks good. Is it proof false? Okay, so there's a fundamental flaw here. Okay. Okay, well, that's good to know. That's actually good to know. I'm gonna have lunch and reflect on this because this definitely needs to be way more reliable. Okay, let's take a moment. Why doesn't it draw a correlation between okay, this might also be wrong. When I say things like hide state, do not show state, it might not even update the state. But it might like repeat the user stories. Yeah. I do wonder about this. Why it doesn't. Right, task. I like them. So what did it actually... I want to be able to... Yeah, again, it just creates something new. As a user, I want to be able to assign tasks to a specific team member. It doesn't say anything about that. Okay, I think this needs to work in a different way. Maybe I shouldn't. Well, this needs to be required, but maybe this, it shouldn't be required to. This is interesting. So the updated state. So we're not, it's not immutable. We're making it mutable. So you can choose which keys that it actually wants to update. I wonder how that changes. God damn it, I need food. I'm so hungry. I want, but that means that we might not always get. So this is the thing. We have to make one more change. So the state is actually partial. You don't know if you have the state there or not. So I think that changes some things, maybe. Isn't the state partial? No, why isn't this partial? Why aren't they partial? So state might not be there. And it's always there when you generate a response. Oh, sorry. Sorry, I'm doing it wrong. So this is partial. And this is partial. So that means that we kind of want, when we pass in the state to generate prompt and generate response, we kind of want to, let's just see what happens first. I think we need to keep like an internal updated version. I want a task management application. So I wonder if it brings is approved. Oh. Okay, I like it. Oh yeah. No. So that's also interesting. How does it interpret required for a field? If it's an array, does it mean that an empty array? No, I have to eat and think about this. It's not working as I hoped. Maybe I should go back to function calling. Yeah. Because with function calling, you could even describe. The tricky thing about function calling is that it requires so much wiring. I don't like the developer experience. How could we approach this differently? I have okay, so that didn't work at all. Also, I'm thinking about like the agent description shouldn't be part of every conversation. Like it should only be part of the you want. So there's also this thing where you have description and then you have goal. So the goal is to get an approval for the user stories. Um, um, how would that fit in? Like, this is the description. With this JSON schema. And then we get like the list of user stories. But it's not only that, like it's the whole concept of even if I approve with a prompt, it just generates new user stories, which I find very curious. Let's just add it. Your goal is to get approval for these user stories. Yeah, I just wonder where it fails. I want a task. And it's gotten worse, right? It seemed to be much better. task management application. I do not need reminders or categories. This looks good. Yeah, like it's almost like like what I'm thinking about now is you want to achieve a certain state. That's what you want. So I wonder what if you say that the goal is a certain state. And the goal is like it's an yeah. So how would that look like? It will be is approved true, and then suggested user stories will be something. Would that make sense? And could you make it dynamic? So you would say goal is state. And you would basically just, this is very interesting. So the goal is state is approved true. I wonder if that makes sense. So what we could do is that in the prompt, we could call the goal with the current state. And then we can make that part of the prompt. Maybe the whole thing is just doesn't make any sense. I don't know. Ugh. But then at least we could insert that into the prompt and say, but that's also the thing, like this isn't a JSON output. It has more. So I don't see how it could like, I want to try it though. I'm going to eat some food and then I'm going to try that. To define your goals as a state. It makes sense conceptually. But if it matters to the agent, I have no idea. And then we don't need. Okay. I'll probably don't stream anymore today, but thanks for tagging along, and then we'll just talk later, I guess.